Research shows that teen drivers whose parents are highly involved in the supervised driving process are 50% less likely to crash a car. They are 71% less likely to drive intoxicated. They are 2 times more likely to wear a seatbelt, and they are 30% less likely to use a cell phone. My name is Terry Moir, and I am the program director at Channel 3. I am now the mother of 2 driving teenagers. Before we get started, let me introduce our 2 panelists tonight. This is, in fact, Scott Robertson. He is the HR director and the teen instructor at Drive Team. And I'm happy to tell you that my daughter went through the Solon High School Driver's Ed program, and then I enrolled her at Drive Team because I really felt she needed the backup. And this is Anne-Marie Hayes. Anne-Marie is the president of Teens Learn to Drive Foundation and a board member on the National Organizations for Youth Safety. These 2 people have so much information to give you tonight.
I want to tell you a little bit about how I got into this, because if anybody had told me 5 years ago that I would be a driving instructor and talking to parents about safe teen driving, I wouldn't have believed it. About 4 years ago, I was having a glass of wine with a friend of mine who's an actuary. And we were talking, and I said to her in the course of the conversation, so what's my life expectancy now? As kind of a joke. And she said, well, around 94, 95. And I have to say that really shocked me. And I said to her, well, gee, I'm sure the number I heard was more like 78 or 80 for women. And she said, well, that's true if you look at everybody from birth. But once you get past 30, it jumps way up. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, there are lots of different reasons, but the biggest reason is because so many teens and young adults make bad decisions and have risky behaviors and they die too soon. My daughter was 13 at the time, and that scared the heck out of me. And I came to realize that if I lose her as a young adult or as a teenager, it will almost certainly be in a car. I had heard the statistics before, but somehow that's when they really came home. And so everything changed for me, and this is what I've been doing ever since.
How do you feel about the idea that we're putting 15-and-a-half-year-olds into cars and assuming that after that 8 or 12 hours of, even with 12 hours of instruction, is that enough for them to be safe on the road?
It's definitely not enough. 8 to 10 hours of behind-the-wheel experience with an instructor is a good starting point. It will give them some basic skills. But really, parents are the key to helping them practice those skills and hone those skills. And the majority of government groups believe 100 hours is really what they need of practice to begin to develop reflexive skills. And reflexive skills are the skills that take over when a box falls off the truck in front of them, or when something happens and they need to decide where to go on the road to avoid it. And that's really where you want to get your teens to.
A lot of cars now have backup mirrors and backup cameras as well. Do you think kids should be taught to depend on those, or?
If they come to our school, we will tell them to cover that up, because we don't want them to use that as a judge when backing a vehicle up. We want them to be able to use their mirrors. Learn to use your mirrors. Learn to use your side mirrors. If you have to, and you have to turn your head a little bit to see, but not to use a backup camera.
Practice must be structured, and you have to cover all kinds of weather, all kinds of road conditions. More crashes, more deadly crashes happen on rural roads than on city roads. I mean, there are more crashes on city roads, but most of those are fender benders. In rural areas, that's really where the deadly crashes happen, partly because you drive at a higher speed, there are animals, there are soft shoulders. I mean, there are a lot of different reasons. So you need to practice on rural roads as well as city roads. You need to practice on neighborhood roads as well as big intersections. And you gradually increase the levels of difficulty as they begin to learn to drive. One of the most dangerous maneuvers on the road is the left-hand turn. And you need to practice those again and again. It's very difficult for youth to judge how quickly oncoming traffic is coming, and so that requires a lot of practice.
They have to have highway time. They have to learn to be able to drive on a highway. If you're investing in a driving school, make sure that school is going to teach your child how to drive on the interstate. Just like Anne-Marie said, it has to be gradual, but teach every element of what your teen needs to learn.
Don't cancel the lesson because it's raining out today. I mean, once they've had a lesson or two, then it's really important. If there's rain or snow, you want to make sure that you're there the first time that they experience it. So you're able to help them and you're that extra set of eyes.
What is the teen driving contract, and why do you think it's so valuable for a family?
Parents have the most to lose. If your teen is in a crash, it will change your life forever. So make your own rules, set your own rules for the family, write them down and initial them so everybody understands what they are. Agreements help parents really talk with their youth about situations that you might not think of right off the bat. They also help define what the rules are, because one of the worst things to hear is, "I thought you meant." You really want them to understand what the rule is and what the repercussions are if they don't follow the rule. The other thing that does is protects your teen. So if someone says, "Come on, you can take him on the highway," they can say, "Look, if that happens, I lose my license for 3 weeks or 2 months, so I can't do it." It gives them a reason to do the right thing. The other thing that I think a contract should have is what I call a safe passage clause. And a safe passage clause is something like, if you are ever in a position where you need a safe ride home, I don't care where you are, I don't care what the circumstances are, call me and I will come and get you. I would rather come across town at 3 o'clock in the morning to pick you up than identify your body in the morgue the next day. Where graduated driver licensing came from, it's not to punish teens. That's not what it's about. What they did was take all the statistics of crashes over the last years and looked at how many teens die and are really badly injured every year. They looked at all of the factors that influence that crash. Darkness was one of them. High speed was one of them. Passengers was one of them. Now cell phones and other distractions are part of that. And that's really why we have those laws. I would recommend that you really take a look at what the law is and decide whether or not that's good enough for your family. But I think it's really important not to sacrifice safety for convenience. And I mean, it's the same thing my mother said to me. Johnny may do it, Billy may do it, you're not doing it. And that's really where parents need to draw the line. And don't underestimate, I mean, they're watching you from a very early age. They're always watching. So once they get their license, you will find that they do exactly what you did. If you tell them not to use the cell phone, and there's a new study out now that teens say 90% of their parents say, "Do as I say, not as I do." You got to put the cell phone away. For me, that's an easy one because I've never been a person who has to have that constant contact. But for me, the harder choice is like, I have to admit, I've driven when I've had a glass or two of wine, and I don't want my daughter to do that. So what I decided I had to do was be a better role model, and I had to make sure she saw me as a better role model. So I started, every time we go out, my husband or I'll have the conversation in front of my daughter, okay, who's the designated driver tonight? And we talk about it, whoever is doesn't drink, and no alcohol. That's what I want her to hear, and that's what I want her to emulate. And it's hard to set yourself up as a role model.
If you realize that maybe you're not the best instructor for your teen, get somebody else. Get an independent, hire somebody, hire a school to do it for you. But don't put them in a position where they're getting screamed at by you, which is making them nervous and putting them at risk and you at risk and somebody else at risk.
When it comes down to driver's education or really making sure they know what they're doing.
That's where we want to skimp. I'll pay $40 an hour for a math tutor. I'll pay $50 an hour for piano lessons. But when it comes to driving, I already know how to drive, so I can kind of do that. That's where we decide to skimp. My daughter will never be a concert pianist. She hates practicing, but she'll be driving for the next 60 years. That's a really good investment to make sure that they start off safe and stay safe.
Get involved with your child. Talk to them 2-3 years before they're going to get that license. Start talking to them and make it your mission to pass your knowledge on to another parent that wasn't here tonight, so they can pass it on to another parent. So maybe we can save a teen the close to 32,000 teens that have been killed in the last 10 years in fatal car crashes. we want to save them.
Please help me thank Scott Robertson and Anne Marie Hayes for what's been great information. Absolutely great.